You wake up on a normal Tuesday morning and check your bank account the same way millions of people do. Not with excitement, but with a quiet calculation running in the background of your mind. Because money rarely feels like something that works for you. It feels more like something that constantly moves through you. Rent leaves the account. Groceries leave the account. Transportation, subscriptions, unexpected expenses, small things that seem harmless, but slowly shape the way your finances behave. For most people, money behaves like water flowing through a pipe. It enters, it exits, and very little stays behind long enough to change anything meaningful. But something unusual happens when a person crosses a specific financial threshold, often somewhere around $100,000 in net worth. At this point, money begins to behave differently, not because of motivation or discipline alone, but because of mathematics. Before that threshold, financial growth is dominated almost entirely by contribution. Every dollar that increases your net worth usually comes from your labor, from hours worked, from income saved after expenses. Even when investments are involved, the growth generated by those investments remains relatively small compared to the effort required to earn and save the principal. A 5% return on $5,000 is only $250. The math simply does not have enough mass yet to create visible momentum. But as capital grows, something subtle begins to change in the structure of the equation. When a portfolio reaches $100,000, that same 5% return becomes $5,000. Suddenly, the system begins to produce noticeable output without additional hours worked. And that change introduces a psychological shift that many people underestimate. For the first time, money starts to feel less like something fragile and more like something mechanical, a system capable of producing motion on its own. This is where the behavior of compound growth begins to reveal itself more clearly. Each year, the base becomes larger, which means the same percentage return produces a larger absolute result, which then increases the base again. The process still appears slow from the outside, but internally, the structure has changed. Financial growth transitions from being powered almost entirely by effort to being supported by accumulated capital. This is why the early phase of wealth building often feels disproportionately difficult. People are operating in a mathematical environment where the numbers are simply too small to generate visible feedback. The system behaves like a machine that requires significant manual input before its internal mechanisms begin assisting the operator. Historically, this pattern has appeared in nearly every economic system that relies on capital accumulation. Whether in early industrial investment, stock market participation, or long-term saving structures, the initial stage is defined by slow, visible progress, followed by a gradual transition where capital itself becomes a meaningful contributor. Understanding this threshold does not mean the process becomes easy, nor does it imply guaranteed outcomes, because markets fluctuate and personal circumstances vary widely. What it reveals instead is the underlying structure of the financial system itself. Money behaves differently at different scales, and once a certain level of capital exists inside the system, the mathematics that governs growth begins to change its character. For many people, the first $100,000 is not important because of what it can purchase, but because it represents the moment when money slowly stops behaving like a temporary resource and starts behaving more like a small economic engine.